what's up? It's Matt. RYLA Routine, episode 16 with the amazing Dylan. Dylan, how are you?
Great.
Awesome. So, Dylan, we're just going to jump right into it. I know, Dylan, you've got some time at camp. I know, I know you're probably one of the more tenured folks that's still hanging around camp. What year was your camper year?
My camper year was 2016 V2.
Yeah, 2016 version two. And how many? And came back as a CIT? How many times as chief?
CIT 2017, Chief 2018, 2019, and then
Two.
twice this last.
Yeah, awesome. So you've seen camp from a lot of different perspectives, and I think just like to throw it out there too, you've got RYLA has quickly kind of become a family ordeal
For
um,
sure.
with your dad and your brother as well, and I know we'll get to talking a little bit about that because I think that's some dynamics that it's like Aaron came to camp and then Kyle came to camp, and there's not a ton of there's not a ton of that in regards to like staff and the chaperone side. I know there's a few chaperones that have come because their kid was a camper per se, but I think the world of you, your brother, and your dad, as people, and have obviously had the most time with you. And I don't know if you saw the picture I shared of you today on the Facebook page, like it's kind of like a tease. Did you
Yeah,
see that? That's
yeah, I
like
did.
my favorite. That's like when I think Dylan, that's what I think. I think Dylan, but I think Dylan because of that red shirt. Because like that red shirt is like that's probably that color shirt was like my favorite RYLA shirt. Just because of the color. And then I looked at that picture and I was like, I mean, that the red shirt pops, like Dylan smiling, like it's just a great I think moment capturing the moment of what I think when I think of RYLA. It's just that joy piece. So you come as a camper in 16 version two, right? So we moved, but that was when we had moved, ran two in 16 so that we could move to the fall. How did you get to camp? Who sent you to camp? Because you're a Northeast Oklahoma kid, right?
Yep, I went to Afton High School, and Michael Addington, uh, I guess, talked to our counselor. And as soon as I said I was interested, he had my phone number, was like telling me, "Hey, you're going. You said you wanted to go."
He really doesn't give anybody a choice, does he?
No, he doesn't. But I needed that, honestly. And I was the type of kid that was like, oh, I kind of want to go, but he was like, nope, you're going. So he
So
even, oh,
Afton,
sorry.
for those that don't know, Afton, I mean, how many kids were in your graduating class?
Oh gosh, maybe about 50, and we were a big class.
Yeah, so Afton's not a huge school, right? And so Michael had started like Michael had started his way from Miami, and then all of a sudden here goes Afton and Fairland, and all those schools he starts like grabbing a hold of. And were you the first kid from Afton?
Tough Johnson and I were the first two to come.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's awesome. I did see. Speaking of Tough, I saw Tough at like the photo that I had on Facebook this morning of you.
Mhm.
Um, I hadn't thought of that name in a while, but I remember Tough. Same thing. Tough had come back and supported camp too after attending camp.
Mhm.
So Michael says you're going and you went to camp. Tell me about that. Tell me about that. Like go back in time. Here we are, almost we're 7.5 years in a rewind. Like what was the experience like as your camper year?
Well, Tough and I got there, and we got there a little late. Michael's wife actually drove us there separately. And when we got there, Tough and I both were just like, oh my God, this is not what we're used to, this high energy. Like we had both been to a lot of camps, but nothing like RYLA.
Yeah.
And as soon as they split us up, we were both just like texting each other, like, oh my gosh, like what is going on? But I think we both definitely had the personalities for it to where like we're very open people and we get along with everyone. And I think that camp really brought out a lot in me, as like I was very reserved and not like I'm not the type of person to open up very easily. And RYLA definitely like pulls that. It still pulls it out of me every year.
Yeah. Who was so back in 16, um what who was your CITs and chiefs? Like is there was there like what did leadership look like? I mean, did you get there through camp or was it the matter of like these CITs and chiefs like sometimes it's that group that helps you get there. Sometimes it's different things at camp. I mean, was it CITs and Chiefs?
I think it was a mix of everything. None of the CITs or chiefs, I think, ever came back after my CITs or chiefs came back
Right.
after my camper year. But I Alex and Mariah were my chiefs' names, and they were definitely high energy, like just super outgoing, like talk to everybody. And I remember just being like, oh my gosh, like this person actually wants to get to know me and wants me to be myself and show my personality. They're not just here to like do their job, they're really here to make an impact.
Yeah. What when it came to camp itself, what was the like as a camper year, was there your favorite moment of camp? Like what was your aha moment there at camp?
My favorite moment of camp was definitely the wall as a camper because that's something I would have never done had I not been, encouraged by my tribe and my chiefs and CITs. Like, never in a million years would I have done that.
Yeah, I think that we talked a little bit about the wall with different folks, and I think the wall is I think this trust factor gets built to the point where all of a sudden, like, well, somebody asks me, I can do it. Maybe I'm reluctant, but I can still go. Yeah, I mean, you're going to be there to help me, right? Like, I can't. Again, you just can't. I can't do it by myself at all. When it comes to like the leadership aspects of camp, what do you take away from camp? Maybe it's not as a CIT or chief. Maybe it's as a camper, or maybe it's just like it's a constant reminder. Like, what are the things at camp that you walk away with?
uh, I think camp is just a place of acceptance, and nobody at that whole camp is judging you. You
Yeah,
can stand up on a chair and sing a song as loud as you can, and people are just going to cheer you on. They're not going to sit there and like say rude comments or be, mean in any way. And I every year I go to camp and that amazes me because real life isn't like that.
no, you're right.
Camp brings that out of you, and then I feel like when I leave I do make it a real life thing. I
Yeah.
encourage others to be themselves, and that's something I love about camp so much.
What do you think? And this is a deeper question than probably I've asked most. Like, why do you think why do you think that is the case? Like, why you say you basically we're getting out of the fact that at camp we're accepted, it's okay being ourselves, but then when we get back in reality, folks aren't. I'm not going to say folks aren't willing. It's just that's not the reality. Why do you think that's the case?
Mm, I think Harper talked about your cool card
Yeah,
last couple weeks ago,
yeah,
and everybody has one, whether you want to admit it or not,
sure,
especially in new situations.
yeah,
Um, and I think as far as RYLA, like all of the chief CITs, leadership, everybody running the camp, as we all throw that out, like she said. And I think when the kids get there and they see that, they're like, they can kind of throw theirs away too, like it. And I feel like in real life, everybody is so like, I have to, put on this front. I have to be professional. I have to be X, Y, and Z. But I can't be just be yourself.
yeah. I think it's you just said that, and I was like, so being professional can be fun.
True, I
but
can.
but people but professional has a like I it's so funny. Andy Truman, who's one of my really good friends, was in the Broken Arrow Rotary Club with me when I was in Broken Arrow. I had lunch with him last Monday, and I probably hadn't seen Andy for probably face to face. Probably we text all the time, but like face to face, and he's just 20 minutes down the road. But neither one of us really made it a priority, and um, we had lunch, and like I get out of the car, and I've got my red pants on, and Andy's like, immediately he's like, talking about the red pants, right? And I go, there's so many people I think, or maybe it's the dress professional, or just the professional environment where culture comes into play, and like I have to be, I have to fit in X, like, and maybe that's a box, or maybe there's lanes, but I think a lot of this has that cool card. It's just being you. It's being true to who you are, and when we talk about our passions and we talk about that talent shield and we talk about our vocation, that red dot on the triangle and that purpose. Like if my purpose in this world is to be awesome or my purpose in this world is to spread joy, spread kindness, I can't do that by keeping it inside. But I know for a fact that in some cultures, work cultures or school cultures, that's just not even accepted. It's the culture is business. It is proper. Those red pants that I wear wouldn't be appropriate in certain spaces because the uniform says this, that, or the other. Whereas for me, it's an opportunity, it's a conversation starter. It's also, I mentioned that RYLA routine. It's that shirt right there. It's that color, like may not look red on the screen, but it's like that bright red that I think it's love, it's passion, it's power. Um, they're not, you know, I just think we've got to get to a point where it is okay to be me.
Mm.
And maybe that's not me. Maybe that's the camp me. And like I'm okay only doing it for 4 days a year because it's a challenge for me to be that. It's a challenge for me for 4 days to be screaming and yelling and singing and because like really that's not me. I'm an introvert and I just want to keep things close but that's what I can be. That's what I am for RYLA because that's what the job says it needs to be.
Mm.
Um, on that. So it's interesting you say that because I think it's a personal choice, but it's also sometimes it's a professional box we get put in as professionals in that. So you're in Pittsburgh. Remind me, job, school,
I'm in grad school right now,
and what are you in grad school for?
school psychology.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So mental health, obviously a big hot topic, and I think we went through camp of post pandemic that looked vastly different when it came to the 17-year-olds we had pre pandemic. Um, we had kids that have a lot of things going on, and so you talk about that school psychology. You know, we haven't really had a lot of conversations with this folks. The mental health and the mental well being piece, like you hear kids come to camp and like there's this sharing opportunity or there's this opportunity to be me and meet people maybe that are like me. Some people would say it's therapeutic. That's not the intent is not for us to be a camp of therapy, but it turns into a camp of acceptance, and that then all of a sudden the belonging and relationships matter. Why school psychology for you? Why'd you go down that path?
Um, well, at first I wanted to be a teacher, but both my parents are teachers, so I know what that paycheck looks like. No, I want to have an impact on kids and I want to really make a difference in my everyday life, not just 4 days out of the year.
Sure.
But I love kids and I think that there's so many issues that start in childhood
Yeah.
that there's a lot of things that can be fixed and I want to be part of that solution.
Well, and I'm sure I will not educate you on this, but when you talk about adverse childhood experiences and ACEs and the buzzwords of like early childhood, I mean, uh, there's many things that it's that past and how we're shaped, right? It goes back to our thumbprint, and these kids have thumbprints that come to camp. These young men and young ladies have trauma, and not it's deposits and withdrawals. I mean, that trauma is typically a form of a withdrawal, but they have these things happen in their past, and to have people like yourself that want to serve and want to passionately support people and support kids um, is mission critical. I mean, just so critical to the success of where I think what we saw in October with and March with these kids that were coming to camp just with some baggage. And I don't know what if the pandemic put a pause on some of that stuff or the pandemic put especially on the trauma side. I feel like sometimes we talk and like if a kid was in a physical situation where maybe they were abused or verbally abused, physically abused. They were with that abuser during the pandemic more than they were with anybody else.
Yeah.
Um, and that I think is something to think about. But I also know that we're in a place where post pandemic, these kids are just they're trying to digest so much. And I mean, and I say this like you experience college through the pandemic, and you experience college pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Like it's not I'm just acknowledging it's change. At least for
Yeah.
me, that's how I see it. Like a lot changed. Um, did you? I mean, so you talked about education, like potentially being a path. I mean, so you're at Pitt State, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So being at Pitt State, I mean, you get your undergrad at Pitt State, and then what what made you what was really the like what did that feel like? What's it feel like having the background you have while supporting camp? Like what's the you've got some educational knowledge, and I'm sure you've had some practicums and stuff like that, or internships, whatever people call them,
Mhm.
and then you have camp. Like how does that potentially connect, or does it connect?
It does a lot. I think, and especially, and another thing is just my age, I'm 23. So being with 16, 17, 18-year olds is a lot different than it was when I was 19.
Yeah.
So, and there is kind of that, it's hard to get over that relationship, I think, of like friendship, but also I feel so much wiser to where I'm just like, just don't do that. Like,
Yeah,
but uh,
I understand that.
but I love it the same. And I still feel like I connect with the kids just fine despite being, older. But I definitely do have more of like a parent teacher like relationship with them at this stage in my life.
Yeah. Do you feel like educationally, I mean, are there things from either your education that you bring to camp that you see be successful, or are there things that you feel like, hey, I learned, I get to put this in practice at RYLA, or I try this at RYLA, and I get to bring it back to my practical, like, day-to-day life um as a college student and professional?
Mhm. Yeah, I've taken honestly, a lot of assignments I've used kind of brought Ryla into it and different aspects that we, talk about or go through at Ryla. I've, written some essays about it, and I love kind of combining that because it is, kind of job experience working with teenagers.
Right.
But I do feel something I love to do every year, like, in Tribe Time, we talk about, you were kind of talking about like the mental health aspect, but that last Tribe Time, every camp, I always try to get every kid to tell me, like, we've talked about your past and how you're shaped. We've talked about, I've had, however many kids cry and tell me their story. And I love that. But the last Tribe Time, I always try to say, what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
What part of camp are you going to take home? And I always try to make everyone share. And I love hearing, they're so different. Some people are saying, well, I'm just going to be nicer, or I'm going to try to and then some of them are like crazy ideas, like I'm going to start an interact club like I did when I left,
Right.
like I just love that because your past is important and how you're shaped is so important and sharing that is important. But what are you going to do with it when you leave?
Yeah.
And I love that.
Well, I think that's you talk about, the past and how you're shaped, and you just brought up the Interact opportunity. You did have the opportunity to start the Interact Club there, at Afton. So, like, briefly, as we like start tying this thing up, like, tell me more about, um like, how's your dad get involved in this? Like, how does your dad get to the table? Because I'm sure Jackson gets to the table in a different way too. But, like, I mean, how does Dennis get to how does he get engaged? And then all of a sudden, I'm like, wait, so mom's an educator too. Why isn't mom there with us? Like, why don't we just have the whole family? But no. So tell me, how did how did your dad get connected in this big picture of things?
So I think which obviously he saw the impact Ryla had on me as a junior in high school. And then he saw me go back, several times. And I think the whole time Jackson wanted in because Jackson's personality.
Yeah.
And he couldn't stand that I was going to a camp like that and he couldn't. But my dad, when we started the Interact Club at Afton, he didn't want to be the sponsor because he was like, no, that's your thing. Like, you just do it.
Yeah.
And then after I had graduated, the teacher that we had as the sponsor, she left. And then he took over the Interact Club at Afton. So he's the sponsor for them now,
Okay.
which I think he's doing a great job with it. But
How did
no,
how did you convince him? Who convinced him to be a chaperone?
I believe Michael Addington had a big part in that.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's awesome. And so Jackson, if I remember correctly, Jackson go to he didn't go to Afton, does he?
No, he goes to Fairland.
Okay. So he goes to Fairland. So it's one of those things where so now you got him coming to camp, and so they have an interact club as well.
Yeah, he just started it
Right.
last year.
That's what I was thinking. I'm trying to, it's a challenge to keep all these things in line because I'm like, okay, so I know Dylan started the one in Afton, and something makes me believe Jackson just started one too. So I think you may we may at some point someday, we get to Jackson to get make that happen. Have to have the like Mike Addington somewhere, some way. He's got to be able to share the story of like these two awesome kids, and what they did in their community. Because I know the work that you guys do through your interact clubs. I mean, you're talking Afton and Fairland. They both have very engaged clubs, and I know different projects and things of that nature. I mean, that have been done. When you were there in Afton, I mean, what did you have a favorite project or something you guys did for like as a way of giving back?
Yeah, one of my favorite things that we did is we went to a it's kind of like a nursing home in the town of Afton, which at that time when we started the club, I think we had like 60 some members,
Oh
you
wow,
know, in a high school of like 200 kids. So
yeah,
we all got out of class one day and we went to the like nursing home and we were playing like charades and doing like little crafts and stuff and just seeing like that many kids, there's probably more kids than there were like older adults there,
yeah.
like patients of the nursing home, and just seeing them all like get so engaged. And we have so many like great pictures of them like playing charades and stuff. And that was my favorite project I think we did.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. Yeah, I'm always amazed. I think that folks at times they fail to acknowledge what great volunteer work that youth do. And I think at times it goes unrecognized almost when you look at like these, not just in Interact, there's a lot of high school kids and middle school kids that are out trying to do something to make their community better. And that greatest generation, those seniors, folks like that. I mean, I look at that group and think, man, that the stories they tell and the enjoyment and the end of life is what it is. Some folks need that extra help, and uh, if somebody was looking for something to do to help support their community, I would probably tell you the first thing I think you could do is basic cards like Valentine's Day cards or Christmas cards, for veterans or for seniors. I just think that like the power of a handwritten note matched with a group that at times I think feels like they're a little forgotten in their communities, because our communities really are shaped around youth in
Yeah.
general. I mean, sports is a hub, and then all of a sudden you have kids and you're still engaged in sports. Well, once your kids get older and they graduate, you go out your grandkids, and then as you age later in life, you can't get to as many things. And just a reminder of how great people are. So if somebody was looking for something, I think to plug in and say, hey, I want to make a difference in my community as a youth. It doesn't cost. I mean, you can construction paper, crayons, and whatever, and you could make a difference. Or it could cost nothing, and I'm sure they have board games. I'm sure somebody would just like somebody to talk to.
Mhm.
And on the flip side, it's, I see interact clubs that are out actively reading with kids, with younger kids, and going into their elementary schools and doing some things like that. So I think those things are just remarkable. What remarkable opportunities to serve. And I applaud you. I know being the first at anything comes with some challenges. I know your brother's mentioned that in starting his club, and
Yeah.
starting that club, and then the maintaining of that, the trust that you can hand it over to somebody else and walk away from something that you helped build, uh,
Mhm.
is a challenge at times too. Um, as we wrap this thing up, like give me like your top two or three like RYLA moments.
Ooh, um, well, one that happened, I think it was in March. And I was like, oh, this is my new RYLA moment. But I had a girl and we were doing the trust fall, which that brings out all kinds of emotions.
Yeah,
But nobody had even told her, like, no, no one had said a word to her. She was just down at the bottom, like catching people. And all of a sudden she turns around and looks at me and just bursts in tears. And she's like, I can't do this. And I was like, okay, well, let's, go over here and talk about it. And I mean, she just hugged me and cried. She didn't even like say anything. And I just held her for, I mean, probably like 3 minutes of her just crying on my shoulder. And I was like, I was just like, oh my gosh, like you have to do it now. Like once you, I'm
Yeah.
gonna make you do it. So I get up there with her, and I mean, she was just bawling her eyes out. And which the whole time I could tell she wanted to do it so bad. Cause like, why else would you say I can't do this? And
Yeah.
so we get up there and I'm just holding her shoulders and she does it. And as soon as she like gets done, she's done crying and she's just in the best mood for the rest of the day, like so happy. And I was like, oh my gosh, how can you go? That's amazing that something like that can make you just on top of the world. Um,
It's the little things, right? I mean, it's not the some of the smallest things have the largest impact. And that's what's amazing. Like we see it as small at times, but yet it's all the things that happened to her to get her to that point, right? It's
mhm,
her trusting in you, her trusting you. You don't just gain that trust, So like, let's say you're on low ropes on Saturday, and it's 48 hours after they've been at camp. I mean, that's that secret sauce of camp is something that I can't bottle. Like if I could bottle it and sell it, we'd be millionaires. Like because everybody needs that real trust.
yeah.
Not I'm supposed to trust my teacher. No, like real, like be a real trust, like with things that matter, and that past and how we're shaped. I keep this guard. And I'm not going to tell everybody that, right? When I talk
Mhm.
about a new day, like I don't walk around with a sign that says all these things in my past and how I'm shaped. That's not who we are. And so to gain that trust in 48 hours, I mean that's a huge testament to you as a leader, and I know that's not what you're looking for, but like as a leader, like you gain, I think our CITs and chiefs and leadership staff and everybody like fail to acknowledge like the level of trust that goes into like the successes that people have or the RYLA moments that happen at camp. It doesn't come easy. We know that, but somehow we make it happen in a really short amount of time.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I love that I have gotten, my little brother and my dad involved and
Yeah.
them, especially like in March as both of their like first times at camp, and them just talking, so highly of it and being so excited to go back into Afton and Fairland. And like I feel like even my dad, at 50 some years old, he's like excited. And I
Yeah.
love seeing that.
What do you think? I'm gonna. It's okay to put them on the spot because eventually I'll get to those guys too. But like, tell me about on their first day of camp back in March. Like, were there moments through the day where like they caught you or you caught them, and like it's like how's it going, and like what did that look like?
Oh yeah. Well, I think my dad called me about 100 times before camp, asked me what he needed to bring, and he was a little nervous. But then as soon as he got there, and which he brought a bunch of kids from Afton, and he was so excited, like he was dancing and being silly, and like I see that, but especially him being a teacher, like not a lot of people see that.
Yeah.
So it was so awesome to see him like opening up in front of all the kids. And then Jackson, I think I heard him yelling from across the camp within 5 minutes of him being there. But
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Well, hey, as we tie this thing up, anything you want to talk about, anything you want to say, kind of what's RYLA mean to you?
RYLA is just, it's magic. It's absolutely magic. Just bringing in all that acceptance and kindness. And I want to thank Michael Addington because I know he'll watch this and just talk about how awesome he is for a minute, because I wouldn't be there without him and his encouragement and him texting me every year telling me to put my application in. And
Yeah.
he's such
I,
an
I
awesome.
know I don't know the numbers off the top of my head for Miami in that area, but I know like I was joking because I was in Prior the other day and I spoke to their club and they had like of the 2143 that have been to camp, they had like 5% of camp,
Mm,
and I would guarantee you, gosh, who knows? I need to go look because I'm entertained to know how many kids Michael sent to camp, um, because it's not just getting kids to camp. I think very few people, and I'm not looking for a pat on the back for me and Tracy, but it's very few people understand how we get to camp.
Mhm.
Like in the local Rotarian, like Michael, that's trying to get kids and all the communication with all the counselors and all the parents and all the paperwork. Like, I mean, me and Tracy get the back end, but we're not the one having to actively go out and recruit. That's up to the local Rotary Club. And Michael, Michael's absolutely made, I mean, the Miami Rotary Club sends more kids on an annual basis to RYLA than anybody in the district. And by all means, probably not the most well sourced Rotary Club, but he's figured out how to do things like his Valentine's Day dinners and stuff like that as a benefit to raise money for kids like you, your brother, Tough, all these kids, all these awesome, I mean, gosh, the awesome people that have come out of Miami through the Miami Club that have come back and chaperoned or been CITs or chiefs. And, I do. I appreciate you lifting up Michael because we couldn't do it without him. We also couldn't do it without you and your brother and your dad, those folks that have taken the extra step and went one more step further with that. So I just appreciate you. I think you need to know that that matters more. Yeah, as a volunteer, it's Michael's job. It's where he gets it fills his bucket. And as as a young lady, as you're starting to um, explore life outside of school and as a professional, you're going to have to find a way to fill that bucket too. Um, and whatever it is, you'll bring joy to it and you'll bring your awesomeness to it. And I have no doubt in that, on that side. Um, anything else before we roll out of here?
I don't think so. I don't have anything else.
Awesome. Way. I appreciate you, Dylan. I really do. 16 episodes and we keep hearing the same thing. Acceptance, kindness. And I can tell you right now that is 100% one of the things that is our goal. This shirt that's here over my right shoulder, don't just survive, be alive. I think that's what Dylan's just hammered home. And that's that. Yeah. And there are times where that professional setting may not be appropriate to stand on a table or stand on a chair and sing. But sometimes we create our own guardrails and it's okay to take those guardrails down. Leave that cool card at home, like Harper talked about. It's exhausting to do it all day, so I fully don't think you got to do it 365, 24/7. But if it's not you and not your personality, then make sure for the 4 days that you come to camp, you bring it to camp. And when you talk about camp, figure out how to get that gear again. But I appreciate you, Dylan, very much. We finished up episode 16, 17 coming at you next week. And we hope you have an awesome day here that we'll record on Saturday. So it'll be Sunday. Hopefully the weather's awesome where you're at as it has been here in Tulsa, as well as I know Dylan said it was in Pittsburgh. And stay blessed. Be awesome.